guys, it's Karl. So we have the very first brand new Apple product of 2023 in-house. This is the brand new 16-inch MacBook Pro. So technically Apple had a low-key announcement. It wasn't an official keynote. And we had the MacBook Pros, both the 14 and 16-inch, coming out with the M2 Pro chip, as well as the M2 Max, as well as the Mac Mini with the M2 chip. So I will leave a video linked up this way. This is the video that you want to see though, because technically, my 16-inch MacBook Pro right over there, that has an M1 Max chip. That has been the powerhouse of the channel. I've traveled the world with it for the past year. I'm excited for the upgrade. I technically got the base M2 Pro, so that has a 12-core CPU, 19-core GPU, 32 gigs of RAM, so that's upgraded, as well as the storage. This is at 2 terabytes, and I'm curious, will this spec out, or how does this fare against my M1 Max? Because technically, according to Apple on some of their graphs, the M2 Pro still comes under the M1 Max, but according to Geekbench, this still runs some better results. So I'll edit the video on this machine. I'll let you guys know with my full review. But technically, the overall aesthetics of the computer hasn't really changed. The box actually has the same wallpaper on the front. And if we take a quick little unboxing, pretty much we have the exact same computer. Packaging is similar, designed by California and Apple. It still comes in the 2 color options for the Pro, so either the space gray or the silver, which I got. But this year around, we do have a braided cable with a matching MagSafe connector. So technically, if you had this in space gray, you would see this little area here in space gray. I love how Apple little attentions to detail. So for some of their MacBook Air lineups, for example, that braided cable does color match depending on which model you have. So obviously the MacBook Airs have the Midnight, they have Starlight. All of those cables match. Unfortunately, just the 2 colors for the Pros. User manuals, warranty info, and if you are a stickler for stickers in the Pros, you just have the black ones. Of course, those aren't color matched, which, yeah, I think that's either hit or miss. And for the 14-inch model, we actually have 2 size power bricks. You either have the 67 or the 96, slight price difference, but for every 16-inch model, you have a 140-watt charger. I would have loved to have seen this with the 2 USB-C ports like you have over on the MacBook Air. I think Apple should definitely include that. I love that. So you only need to carry around 1 brick, say, to charge your iPhone, to charge your MacBook. Obviously, a lot of people travel with their devices, so just having 1 less power brick to travel with, I would have loved to have seen it. And other than that, you can see here, I've got my 16-inch model. And like I said, it looks so similar, pretty much identical form factor wise to the previous M1 Pro, M1 Max, whichever model that you got. So it still is completely machined out of 1 piece of aluminum. It's gorgeous. I/O ports on one side, you've got that MagSafe, like I mentioned, the 2 USB-C ports and a standard headphone jack. On the other side, you have HDMI, which actually can support up to 8K USB-C and an SD card slot. So the one thing that did bother me from the previous MacBook line, the MacBook Pros, the SD card slot, for whatever reason, was kind of hit or miss. So I know Nick has his 14-inch, which we'll bring here in a second. I would say it worked 60% of the time. You kind of had to wiggle around the SD card for it to register. So sometimes I had to live the dongle life, had to bring one extra. It'll be interesting to see when I do my full review if this actually works properly every time. I know that I've had this device maybe for 3 days. It's worked fine so far, so I will keep you guys updated. So for the display, pretty much identical. You still have that little notch cut out for the front-facing camera. Still pretty slim bezels, 16 inches like I mentioned, up to 1600 nits peak brightness, around 1000 sustained, and it is ProMotion, so it is a variable refresh rate all the way up to 120 hertz. Great display. I haven't had issues with my previous gen, and for the rest of the hardware as well, we still have a full-size keyboard. We do have Touch ID, which is always nice, and industry-leading for sure. This is the best trackpad on a laptop in general, just not on MacBooks. It's so nice, it's so large, it has all the nice multi-gestures and some of the best speakers, once again, in a laptop. And I would probably say the toughest choice with the MacBook Pros is deciding, do you need the 16-inch form factor or the 14, because they technically have or can get the exact same specs. You can technically spec both of them with the M2 Max and up to 96 gigs of RAM, which is bonkers. 8TB SSD. So for the 16-inch, the most expensive model you can get will be $6,500 US, or I think around 8,500 Canadian, close to $10,000 with tax, which is bonkers for a laptop. And I would say the biggest difference, other than I guess the form factor and if you travel with the device enough, is the battery life. So 18 hours on the new 14-inch and up to 22 hours of video playback on the 16-inch, which is the most out of any laptop. I would say that's the biggest reason why I still rock my M1 Max. It's the battery life. I know that the form factor of the 14 is so nice. I know that I travel a ton, but just being on my device literally all the time on the road, having that extra screen real estate. I love the 16-inch form factor. I know that it's big, it's bulky, it's heavy, but I'm willing to look past that just for the sheer performance. So I'm gonna quickly kind of compare the new M2 now. So technically I mentioned this should come underneath the M1 Max, the M2 Pro specifically, but according to Geekbench, the M2 Pro was actually better. In my initial testing, fooling around on Final Cut, I honestly couldn't see the difference. I still barely scratched the surface over on my M1 Max. I don't have lag. I don't hear the fans ramp up. So clearly I'm not utilizing the devices to its full potential. It would be nice though to get the new M2 Max chip, just to say that I've fully made that legitimate upgrade, because technically on paper, the M1 Max is still a better device than the M2 Pro. So if we look through all the different SKUs, I know that there are so many to choose from. My recommended spec would probably still be around the base model for the M2 Pro. I don't think most people need the M2 Max. I probably think it's overkill for 99.5% of you, unless you are a true pro video user. And if that's the case, you're probably editing at home with, say, a Mac Studio or some baller kit that's paid for by your production studio. But as I continue to test this out more and more, I will try to get my hands on the M2 Max MacBook Pro, just so I have a direct competitor against the M1 Max. But honestly, M2 Pro, I think it's where it's at. But for the rest of you, I would say still 80–90%. The M2 MacBook Air offers some serious value. It still edits all the 4K footage here. I would probably even argue that new little Mac Mini with the M2, I think that's what, $599? That's some awesome value. I know that you need to still grab a monitor, keyboard, mouse. I think everyone still has those sticking around. So make sure you watch that vid. If you want to see any direct comparisons, let me know down below in the comments. But this has been your first look at the new M2 Pro, M2 Max computers. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will catch the rest of you in one of my next ones. Peace.